I'm going to turn off the middle lights. Read a little better. I'm going to try and go somewhat quick to try and get through it. I'm going to do a little bit of walking you through the plan because there's some sneaky stuff in here that I want you to pay attention to. One, these are all buildings, Unit 1, 6, these Unit 1s, those are buildings, we're going to show those. This right here is a proposed retention basin. It's not a building, so we're not going to draw that in hard. Second, if you look over here, you're going to see a dashed line that says proposed tree line. I realize this is hard to read. It's a blow up of a scan, but that is a tree line that exists. So I'm going to want to fill in some trees there to make that tree line. I'm going to do it lightly in pencil. I'm just going to draw some circles in that are this size or bigger. I'm going to put some clumps of circles in there. And there's a clump. Remember, do 3, 4, 5 in a row. I'm trying to, I don't have to totally fill the space with trees, but I want to put a bunch of them to define that line. If you can see little circles I'm doing. I'm freehanding just rough circles, lightly. You could use your circle template if you wanted to, but I'm going to be tracing over these. So again, I want to hint, I'm mainly focused on the tree line itself. And then I'm going to add, now this is going to be all forest back here, so let's add little clumps in the back. Let's add a few trees over the property line. If I can see which one the property line is. And again, you'll see some stuff in here. If you're confused at something on these plans, feel free to make it up. Just make it look pretty. That's all I ask. I feel like, is that a property line or is that some easement? I don't care. Just make one property line. And I'm going to put a bunch of trees in here in clumps. And I have a couple of them hanging out over the property line because I love having trees hanging out over the property line.
I'm just taking a
And that's fine. That's, you're welcome to come up. Again, we're trying to stay on this edge of tree line just to indicate it. And if I see any places where there's big open areas that I want to fill in, there's an open area there. Put a couple trees down. That's a pretty big open area. Let's just put a couple in there. That's a big open area. And that's probably enough to get the point across that it's a forested area. I could fill the whole thing, but you don't need to. So you kind of have a sense. I put a lot of little circles here. All right, so, typically what I do first is I start putting my hard edges down. And then I go to the trees. So the first thing I'm going to do is grab my triangle. And I'm going to start, I'm going to save time. Hopefully. We're going to be profiling each one of these buildings. This is a bigger scale plan than what we've looked at before. So I'm going to go right to the fat Sharpie so I don't have to draw it twice. But you're going to have to be careful, and here's a suggestion. I'm working down the page because the fat Sharpies will bleed and will smear. If you drag your triangle through the fat Sharpies, it will make a mess. So I'm trying to go I'm not going to do them all at once. I'm going in one direction. I'm pulling away from the last line that I drew, and then I'm going to give those a second to dry. But while I'm waiting for those to dry, I can grab my thin Sharpie and start doing some of these trees, because my hand won't be dragging through any of those fat lines that I drew. So let's just do our clumps. Same rule, little lines, straight line W, straight line. These we don't need to use the equipment for. The buildings, I want you to use a triangle. So, maybe we do 2 clumps and then we'll go back at the fat lines for the building. Okay, I'm kind of sticking to this area just because I don't want to get in here and smear my trees. I'm going to do some of these guys over here. Again, I'm just trying to go in the same direction, meaning that if you see an angle like that, I can just keep going and maybe get a couple of these where I don't have to drag the triangle back through my work. Stop there, back to the trees. And all I'm doing is putting this profile line, not a profile line, but this straight line W, and I'm going right around the clumps of trees with my thin Sharpie. This can be freehand. I can't imagine doing this with a triangle. And I'll stop at this clump in a minute. And then I'll start putting some other fat lines down. I'm trying to remember not to draw that retention basin. Notice I'm going over the lines. I'm checking to make sure that it says unit on there. Did someone already draw the retention basin? Yeah, it's not the end of the, you can make it another building if you want. Okay, so I've got 2 lines on all these buildings, and those are the only buildings I'm worried about. I'm not going to draw anything outside of the property line for now. Wait for, well, I do this switcheroo that I'm doing because it's going to, the problem with, typically I would say, do these buildings with a light line, then later on come back and profile them. Well, it's kind of a waste because you're just covering your light line with a heavy line. But the problem profiling with that fat Sharpie is, these guys don't tend to smear. If I did that with a fat Sharpie, there'd be a big blob right down where my finger went. If I drag my triangle through a fat Sharpie line I just put down, it's going to make a big smear on your drawing. These lines are a lot more forgiving. The thin Sharpies are pretty forgiving and don't tend to smear. So while I'm waiting for, and again, we've got a lot of trees to draw. So while I'm waiting for that Sharpie to be absolutely dry, for the fat Sharpie, I'll go in and put in a bunch of little trees. Now I'll go in another direction. Try and look and see Okay, let's do some of these. And again, if I'm careful, I can pick off a bunch of them without putting my triangles anywhere near the lines I just drew. But if you don't focus on it, it's real easy to... Anybody smeared their fat Sharpie line yet? I'm proud of you if you didn't. Okay, I'm not going to dare. I'll wait for those to dry before I do those. Drawing the forest always seems like a pain in the butt, but I really like the look of it versus, a lot of people will just draw a curly line for the edge of the forest, and it's less work than doing this, but I think the results are nowhere near as good as just drawing the individual trees. Now, you'll notice some shaded areas here. I'm not even sure what that is. Might be wetlands. I don't really care. I'm not going to indicate those any different. A lot of times, what we're trying to do is simplify the drawing to just give a visual look at what it would be looking like, or give you a sense of what it would be looking like if you flew over it in a plane. This drawing that we're working on was done for a planning board review. So they have to show the planning board the retention basin, the wetlands, the old edge of trees. They have to get that information out to them. But, as we've learned, the retention basin looks like another building. It's very good. There's nothing wrong with them showing it this way because the planning board needs to be able to see it. But it doesn't visually give you a sense as to what the project's going to be. It's just a bunch of lines that if you want to spend the time going through them and looking at them, you can kind of figure out what's there. A builder, on the other hand, will be able to look at it and have a better idea because they've got radius. I don't know if they have radiuses on the turns, but it's but it certainly isn't meant to graphically show what's going on. And what typically happens is you go to the planning board with this drawing and an illustration. Because the board can look at the illustration, even the board can look at the illustration right away and get an understanding of, oh, I see, you want trees here and there are trees already existing there. And then they'll start looking at these drawings with further detailed information if necessary.
Can you trace this again?
What's that?
Can you trace this again?
For homework?
Yeah.
If you can get it perfect in class, you don't have to, but I'm reluctant to say that because in the past when I said that, people hung up some stuff that really wasn't quite where I needed it to be. So you're going to decide if you think that what you've done in class stands well on its own, then you can hang it up next week. But I think for most folks, it wouldn't hurt to do it again over the week as an assignment. I'll leave that up to you guys. You get credit for it no matter how it gets up on the board and what condition it's in. So I don't, but, you know, our goal here is to be able to do a decent final project. And the way you're going to do a decent final project is drawing these things. The more time you spend putting pen to paper, the better your drawings are going to be when it's time to turn in the final. So I'm going to, you know, if you have to do one of these twice, and you know, you're here in class, so it's not like you've wasted the time in class, but I'm going to be sneaky. I think I can do this without smearing. Let's see, cross your fingers. Okay, I've got the buildings down, I've got the trees in the forest done. I'm going to do some more trees, and then I'm going to start on the roads. And I'll show you how I do the roads. So we've got, well, let's do this clump of trees up here. This is all new. And what I would do, the little fellows underneath there, I'm just putting in with a slightly different technique to show that something's going on there. And I've got a new tree here. See the little fellows? I just drew those as little blobs. I'm going to do like...
Are the star things on the drawing trees also?
Like these guys?
Yeah.
Yep. They are. So let's take a look at one. Let's take a look at this one right here. You've got the one big tree that's one type of tree. You've got the star trees that are another type of tree. And then you've got these little trees underneath. So how do I do that? Well, I would do it by doing an outline of the stars. I don't need to do the stars. What the stars are and what the other trees are, these are the trees that the CAD program they're working with had in it, and they can go tree, block, tap, 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 and they put these trees in. And by using the stars, they can show two different types. This is also a planting plan, so you see what is it, Fraser fir, gray dogwood. So this is trying to tell someone who's buying the trees what they have to buy. So using those different symbols might be important. Visually, it's really kind of distracting. And I'm not trying to do, our plans are not designed for quantity takeoffs. We're just trying to show visually what the site's going to look like with our new trees there. So we get rid of a lot of the information that's there that we don't need. I don't need to show graphically different types of trees for each one of the trees. I've got them called out in this planning plan. Well, I don't. Someone else called them out in the planting plan. Anybody that lives in Manchester, I think this has been built off of Mammoth Road.
So draw them like the other trees?
Yep, I just draw them. See up here? That's a clump of those trees. Let me stick a piece of white paper under there so you have an idea. If I can find a piece of, here, give me some. See the clump up there, which looked like see, I just simplified that whole mess in there, not mess, but that clump into that clump with a couple little ones underneath it. I didn't even catch all the little ones, that's okay. So I've got that, that's my new clump there. You distracted me by asking a question, and I almost lost my pen, which would have stopped the entire exercise. But that's okay, keep asking the questions. What I'm focusing on for the trees now is the ones that touch the driveway, because my next step is going to be to try and do this drive. So I'll get a few here. You know, you can go ahead and do all the trees if you want at this point, but at some point I get tired of drawing tree after tree after tree, so I try and mix it up a little. Remember, look for the clumps. And then if they got some little fellows, I'm just doing those with just a couple little dewberries and dots. Let's do this clump. Again, I'm focusing on the trees that are near the road, because I'd like to draw the road next. But couldn't help myself with that one. We have all the trees on the road. Yes, we do. You know what? We're so close. I gotta finish the trees. Anybody here familiar with planning boards and how they work? Those are some sad mm-hms. They're tough. And it was back in the 80s, my architectural firm, not mine, the firm I work for, we used to do planning board submissions by ourselves. We'd do a couple sketches. We'd kind of put a couple trees in and say there'll be some trees here, and you've got enough parking, and we'd get approval. That does not happen anymore. And what happens now is you got to bring in a civil engineer, a landscape architect, wetlands engineer. Okay, before I just.
Previous classes that we did, Bob Pollock, he
Yeah.
was a landscape architect.
Yeah.
He did that with the trees.
Yep. It's
Kind of the trees.
it's vicious. while I do my road, I'll talk more about the planning board. The way I do roads, and this one has a lot of curves in it, I'm going to want to start by putting in the curves, and then I'll add the straight edges after. So I just lightly draw the curves, maybe put a dot in there, do the curves. This has got a curve, so I'm going to freehand it nice and slow and easy. Don't be afraid to put in some dots when it gets out of control, which mine just did right there. This one you can freehand, but the driveways themselves, see, that's a pretty straight line, so I'm just going to put the curves in. Now the reason I did the trees first is because the driveway goes under a lot of these trees, so I want to make sure that I don't draw the road through the tree. And I'm just trying to figure out where the road's straight and where the road's curved. And where there aren't trees. That looks kind of curvy. Can you kind of see where I'm putting those curves in? Just the curve parts. And the reason I do that is, it'll become apparent in a minute. Oh, that was a tree. But guess what? It's not anymore. I missed a tree in this clump in the middle, but it's going to be okay without it. But if you put the tree in there that's supposed to be there, that's fine.
So the driveway is a green one?
Just the curves. See what I've done? I put the curves in. Let me show you. I want to do where it's straight. So all I put in there were the curves at the end of the driveway, where the roads curve. But notice here I've got the two curves at the end of the driveway, but I don't have the driveway. I'm going to go back and add those with my straight edge. All right, so, and notice there I had to add a curve because I forgot to put it in. I put a little break there. It's hard to see here, but there is a little break. You try never to do a line, a curved line, and then bring another line right up to it, because you usually wind up with a blob there when you do that. And I don't want the blobs, they stand out. All right, I've got most of the curves. You know what, I think this one is close enough. I will just do that. And that's a curve I missed. So I'm trying to see, again, this one I'm going to put in, but I'm not going to touch it. So, looks good, looks like I got most of it. We'll find out when I start putting in the straight lines. So now I'm going to take my straight edge, and I'm not going to go all the way to the curve. I'm going to get close to it, maybe put a dot in there. Maybe put a dot and go straight. That one just goes under the tree. That one kind of touched. I don't like it, but we can live with it. See the little breaks I'm doing? If you watch this one. Okay, I've got a straight driveway coming off of that curve. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start it there and just leave that break in there. Because if I try and match it right up to that curve, it'll make a blob. But if I put a couple professional dots and breaks in the line, it looks like it was intentional, which is the idea. Take your time and you can make this work pretty well.
We use the bigger one, right?
What's that, the bigger marker? For what?
For the lines,
No.
or is that the thin one?
It's, I had, the only thing that I've used the fat Sharpie for was the profile around the buildings. Nothing else should be the fat Sharpie. The only thing we're gonna use the fat Sharpie for, other than the profile that we did, was shadows, and that's it. And the property line I will use the fat Sharpie for. But those are a long ways off, so put the fat Sharpie away. Now I'm going to do something on this road. When I've got roads that just feather off like that, I like to just end them like that. It's off the property, it continues on, but I don't like it just being two lines that dribble off into nothing. Okay, let's see which ones I'm going to miss. Driveway, 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 driveway. I got a couple here and I got a couple there. Now let's do this. Put a dot, put a line. Here's the line. There's a little bit of one there. That one I got, this one, and then one here. And as you progress, you'll probably find a couple that you might have missed. Got it, got it, got it, got it, got it. Notice I didn't do it, I missed one there. Through the trees. Got it, got it, got it. All right, so I've got the whole road drawn now. At least I think I do. Okay, I've got my first pass at that whole road. So, what are some things we're going to do next? Any thoughts from the group? What are a couple things that need to be done to this drawing? Texture's coming, but that's one of the last things we're going to do. The main things I see that we need to do with my thin Sharpie, before I start doing any of the heavy work, I need to put the lines in the middle of the trees. I need to put a double line around all my paved areas. I'm going to need... Those are the main thin Sharpie things, and then of course the grass lines and property lines. So let me, much like I did with the, I'm going to alternate because if I don't I'll go insane just drawing a million trees. So I'm going to do a few trees. I'm going to start, I can probably do the dots. Just start by putting dots in most all the trees. That is always with the thin one. Put your thick one away. I'm going to come over and take it from you.
I'm just asking.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Just a thin dot. And once I put the dot in the trees, and you could, there's a couple things you could do, but I'm not gonna. For now, it's all about the dots.
These buildings on the side, are they?
I'm not gonna put them in.
Okay.
I'm just focused on what's inside our property line. If you wanted to do them, you could, but I am just trying to focus on the improvements that we're making within our property line. I am drawing the trees. I've had the road go out of the property line, which is good because you would need it to. I've had the trees stick out over the property line a little bit. And just put that center dot, because that's going to help guide us for where we're going to start our branches. And it looks like that was very weak. I did do it. All right, so I got dots on all the trees. Now I'm going to go through and I'm going to put a double line around the edges of my road. I might not do all of it, but I think I probably will. So I do a line, I do a W, I do a line, I do a W. It's just a graphic representation. And you'll see when I'm done that it's going to make the road stand out a whole lot more. Oh, I forgot a little bit of the road there. Now, where it gets to the end, I don't put the double line around it. You'll see what I mean in a minute. See where I cut it off there? I'm not going to put the double line around it. Okay, looks like I've got double line around all the roads. See my road's starting to stand. I didn't put the double line around there, but all the other ones, I tried to go a double line. Now I'm going to start hitting some of my trees, which is going to be a job. I have to put my branches in the trees. A good rule of thumb is when you're doing this, and I'll try and show you an example. All right, when they're individual, it's not a problem because you just throw the lines in and away you go. Try and be irregular. Now, let's look at this clump. I've got big trees, smaller trees, and tiny trees. Tiny trees I'm not going to do anything with. The big trees I'm going to do first with my branches because they will probably be bigger than the little trees. And if I wanted to, I could even leave those blank, but I'm not going to in that case. Here. You know what, I might leave some of these new ones just blank for the smaller ones. Like for example, this guy, I might go like this. And then just leave that. Nope, I might fill in a couple of those, I don't like it. I'm gonna do, but in any event, what I did was I aimed for the big trees first. And put a couple in there. Remember to overlap your lines. Oh, see, I never put dots in these guys. But I did now. So make sure your branches come out over the... Now, one thing you remember that last year we did this 8.5 by 11, so it would have been half as big. The good news is, I'm going to go ahead and fill those trees in. The good news is that you could do it a lot quicker. The bad news is it's too small. Imagine trying to do these trees at half size. The line weight would look terrible. It's just, it needed to be bigger. Got a dot there. Notice my branches go over the edge of the tree. And it's taken forever, but it's not really forever. It just feels like forever. Got a dot there. All right, let's and it's, I mean, none of this is done, I mean, it's all being done freehand, so it's not like it's done with machine-like precision. But notice overlaps. I'm going to focus on the trees along the edge of the tree line, because I might leave a few blank. I don't know. I'm going to make it up as I go along, but I'm going to get the tree line first, because that's the part we really want to show. There's a clump on the tree line. We're pretty close to it. Whenever I'm doing the clumps, I try and aim for the big ones first, and then I go and fill in the little ones after, because a lot of times the big ones go over the little ones. Okay, now I'm going to start at some of the corners, and maybe I won't do all the trees. I'll make that call in a minute. I'm going to do some in the corners, like this little clump here. And I'm going to go down to this little clump down in this corner. I'm going to wind up throwing them all in, but yeah, I'm just going to fill them in. Never mind. So we have to do them all. I thought I might be able to get away with not doing them all, and I looked at it and decided, nope. So this, I got a big clump going on here. I'm going to go right for the big trees. I'm not even filling the little ones. Yep. Look for the biggest ones. Fill them in first. I got my dots there, but I can just put them in and I just dig. Big one here. Biggish one here. This one, that's the big one. So what I'm doing is I'm looking at the clumps and saying, okay, where's the big ones? So I'm going to do the big ones first because they would be probably on top of the little ones. So now I'm going to look, I've got one here that is going to be under this one. So I don't put the stems through both of them. See, I have a stem there and I left that blank. Here, I've got, I'm going to put a stem there. Make that one bigger. And I could use a stem there. Let's go for the biggest one. And then we'll do the little fellows. See, I'm trying to use the branches to define the big tree. So I let its branches stay above the other one. That's a bigger one. I think I got all the trees. Hooray. All right, trees are done. My next move is going to be I'm going to put a property line around it, and then I want to do my shadows. So let's take a look at the property line. You may take out your fat Sharpie. Okay, but first of all, I would take a look, because the property line's a little confusing here. All right, so it goes here. Let's see where it goes. Yeah, I think it goes, it's hard to say. See, I think this might be an existing house on the property, but it looks like, That's a property line. So, is that the property line? Well, I know where I want it to be, so I'm about to make it up. I'm going to put a property line here, and here, and here. So, you'll see what I'm doing. Again, you can take some liberties yourself. For my property line, I tend to use a dot dash line. Notice it's going to this dot here. I'm going to have it go to here. And this is with the Fat Sharpie. I'm going to put it where it actually goes. I'm going to let the road, nope, I'm going to put it over the road. I'm going to come down, but I'm not going to put it over the trees. I'm trying not to drag my triangle through the property line I just drew. Huh. That might not have been a property line. It wasn't. That would be GIMP. So I've got a problem right there. And I'm not sure how I'm going to fix it, but I will. Well, I know how I would fix it. I would GIMP that out. Now there is you can try and erase it. It won't work, but you can try. I might be able to cheat. Let's see if I can fix it. See, I'm not sure which one of these is the property line, so I'm just picking one. If this were for an actual client, I would make darn sure I would ask the question of the client before I drew it. People get very excited about their property lines. Again, I've let the trees hang out over it. Okay, I'm going to try something. It may not work. It might. If I take my white vinyl eraser and I get it a little bit wet, just a little, and then I gently go over this, I might be able to make a nice big blob there. And gentle as I possibly can. And almost gone through the paper. Now, that's not great, but let's let my spit dry on that for a minute and get the eraser off. And it looks like we have a tree there now. Okay. Next I want to do the shadows. The shadows on this are a little tricky because the sun's coming at this angle But all these buildings are at an angle, so some of these buildings is not gonna be real straightforward where the shadows are gonna be. Here's what I'm gonna suggest you do. Untape your drawing. Hold on to your tape. You're gonna need it again in about 30 seconds. Move your drawing up and to the left. That looks pretty consistent. I'm looking at the property line. I'm trying to see. Yep, that looks good. That looks good. That looks okay. That looks okay. All right. So now that I've just nudged it, you can see the dotted line underneath where the building was, and I moved it up and to the left because my shadows are going to be down and to the right. Now, why did I do that? Well, I'll show you. It's hard when the buildings are angled like this. For most of these buildings, that's down and to the right. That's down and to the right. What's going on with this one? Well, actually, it only has one shadow line. There's down and to the right, down and to the right, down and to the right. This one's just down. This one's just to the... See what I'm saying? You can see where the building is underneath it, and it's going to give you some guidance on where to do your fat property, fat shadow line. So let me show you what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a look at these buildings here, and I'm going to go ahead and put just maybe like 1.5 lines down on these. Okay, that one I'm going to stay away from for now. I'm just looking for ones that are pretty clearly down. Oh, that's a problem because I don't want to drag that in here. All right, we've got this one and that one look like this one go down. Oh, this one's down, but I don't want to drag my Sharpie. I'm going to wait for a second, let that dry, and then I'm going to put some other ones in. These guys and this guy really only have a shadow on one side because they're at an angle to the sun. So really, that's going to be the shadow they have. And I know this because I can look at my drawing underneath and kind of see where that shadow is. This guy's very simple. Hopefully I'm not going to... I'm afraid to because I just got those wet. I'll wait a few minutes, a few seconds, let that dry. I'm going to try and focus over here and work my way to the left. All right, so now there's that. So those are done. Now I might even stop the shadow at some of the trees. Just let a little of that tree hang through the shadow. Okay, those are good. So now I just have the bottom of this guy and the sides of this one. Okay, and I've just got the bottom of this one to go. Okay, I've got shadows on all the buildings. You notice they're starting to lift off the page because the shadows. Now I'm going to do my tree shadows, which I'm going down and to the right. Anything that's down, anything that's to the right. I want to put a shadow there. So I got shadows on those trees. And I can, if I want, if I put my piece of tracing paper under there, kind of lets me see a little better. Down to the right. Got a lot of downs here. Down to the right. Oh, I see a line I forgot to put in. What I forgot to do, if you'll notice this centerpiece, I didn't put the W stroke in there, and I'm about to do that now. This is just a line going around the edge of that, like I have on the outside edge. I don't hesitate to put a few dots in there, especially as like it's clear where the down and to the right is, but when it starts transitioning, I'll put a couple dots in. Like so, we got a little to the right there, got a little to the right there, I'll put a dot or two there, maybe a couple there. Once I'm done with these shadows, what are we going to want to do next? Any thoughts? I would do the grass next. And I'd put a little texture in the pavement, and that's going to be about it for texture. This is a small scale plan, meaning that everything's drawn, in the past, in the past, we've done one house on a big site. Well, now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 houses on a larger site. So the level of detail for your texture is going to be, you're not going to get into, we don't have any decks, we don't have any pools, we don't have any ponds, so we're going to be a little limited on what we can do. I would focus on the grass. Hey. Now, I'm finding a fair number of trees that I forgot to put my stems in, but I'm going to go back because I'm real close to having this done and I just don't want to stop. Sorry, I'm looking to see where I missed shadows. Oh! Sure enough. One there, and that looks pretty good. All right, now I just got to put stems in a couple of these trees because I forgot them. And I picked up on it when I was doing the shadows. Thought there was another one. That one. And that one. Okay. Next, I'm going to move on to the grass. All right, so when I do the grass, I'm going to do it, some of the lines are going to go outside of the property line. I'm going to go ahead and do it at an angle like this because that's just natural for drawing. So I'll put my first lines down. I'm just going to start with a couple dots outside. See how I kind of dotted it when it went out there? I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to do one here. Trying to be careful to not make these all the same. Some are going to stick out a little. I try not to, I like to shoot it through the buildings. So there's that one. Let's do another one here. Through a tree. Through the building. I'm even going to put a little out past that road. Put another one here. Get one more in here. Okay, I've got those grass lines in. Now I usually move in my seat and I start putting those other ones in. And actually, I like one right here. Okay, so I'm going to go at 90 degrees, put in 2, put in 1. Put in 1, put in 2, put one on the other side of it, feather it out. There's 1, there's 2. Sometimes it's easier to just go ahead and move right in your chair. Kind of alternating them. We're making some progress. Once I get done with the grass, about the only other texture I'm really going to worry about is I am going to put some stippling on the roads. Try and keep an eye on which lines you're doing. It's easy to get them confused, but you can usually figure out. Okay, about all that's left to do with this one is I'm just going to draw the outline of the scale. I'm not going to put any numbers on it. No letters or numbers. I just want to, I'll mark it down because we would do that in GIMP. Okay, we got grass on the whole thing. Yay. I'm going to put some stippling just in the corners of my road. So I'm going to put a little circle and a couple dots there, a couple there. Why not put a couple here, but sparingly. I'll put a couple near the houses. Again, aiming for the corners. A little bit goes a long way. I'd rather see too few than too many. Anybody think of anything I'm missing? I'm not. Is everybody still conscious? Alright, so there's that. Only thing left to do is put the scale. I made it a little bigger, a little taller than it was in the drawing. Again, I'm not putting any letters on there. Now, let's see. how she looks. I'll take that. And we can call it good. Questions before you go on your break, and we'll come back and do some elevations. Meet me back here in 10 minutes. I got 8:13. How about 8:23?